Hello and welcome everybody, I'm OneProperVarian and today we have dev diary number 150 for Victoria 3, which is the changelog. I normally do not cover changelogs because, well, it was already all kind of talked about, yada yada yada. That is not the case with this one. There are a lot of fixes, rebalancing and so on that I want to kind of put into the spotlight just because I think that will be very interesting. Before we jump into this, I do want to bring one thing up, actually two things I suppose, they do mention it here as well, and that is that there is a modcon going on. I didn't know until, well, basically now either, but basically starting tomorrow until the 15th, there is a modcon on various channels. I will link this in the description, so their website, that kind of stuff. I ran the first modcon, if you recall. This was great fun. This hopefully will be very successful as well. They are, as always, raising money for charity, so let's hope that indeed it pans out. That is the first thing. The second thing is what I want to mention related to this upcoming patch. As you might have already seen, I will indeed be running a short roleplay series in Victoria 3. Over the weekend, I will present, I believe, 3 options to the channel members. They can vote on this. This is the country that we will play right there. Let me address one thing first though, and that is of course the question of what do I expect this patch to be like. This is not me giving you like any information. There is none to be given. What I mean is more like what is going to happen here in Victoria 3. I am super excited for this one because I think the changes that they make to trade, it just looks phenomenal. I hope that it all works exactly the way that it should. Of course, not to mention all the changes related to treaties. It makes it into a much more coherent kind of diplomatic orientation that you take at the very start of the game with your country already. I will tell you, I, fingers crossed that I am wrong, think that we are going to see a ton of bugs and balancing. Let's hope that we're not running into a Stellaris-like hotfix situation. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I hope that it's playable. That is, I think, where I am at mentally. Victoria 3 is a bit of a mixed bag. Or rather, it is a surprise box, right? You kind of take a look at it after and you see a lot of stuff rolling around in there. I hope that it comes out as bug-free as it can, but I already will tell you right now, I would be surprised if this didn't need a couple more patches. It is very ambitious when it comes to the mechanical reworks. I will be doing videos explaining how to do this or that. I will, of course, be doing that roleplay series. We'll just take about a week, and after that, we'll be firmly in the territory where we're looking at going back to some other stuff, maybe CK3, well, we will see as we go. For the time being, let's just hop into this. We have this nice infographic. We can see company charters, diplomatic treaties, prestige goods right there, and then we got monopoly. So some of the treaties are indeed in the DLC. Victoria 3 continues to be my favorite in the sense that they are very, very firm on the policy that all of the core elements should be in the free game. Huge fan of that philosophy. I think it is consumer friendly, and I say this knowing full well that everybody watching this video buys all the DLC anyway, but we should always be in favor of new players being able to enjoy the game with a relatively low investment. So huge fan of this stuff, and why don't we just take a look at the content right here. Of course, if you followed the videos, then you will know much of this. If not, then, well, this will be news for you. They have reworked companies, of course, substantially, and they have added now company charters, which is a colonization charter, it is an investment charter, and an industry charter, as well as a monopoly charter. We will start with a couple of free company charters to hand out. Everything else will be limited by authority. Huge fan of this, of course. Instituting that there is a monopoly, that kind of stuff, that is without a doubt an authority thing, and it strengthens a more authoritarian playstyle, which I think in the past wasn't really the case. The trade charter will be free to use for everybody and allows your company to build, buy, and run trade centers, meaning that even if their actual production sites are low income, this will still make it so that they will greatly benefit from them, as they can then sell them overpriced, of course, on the world market. The world market also something newly added. They added prestige goods, which are basically a better version of normal goods. They added country monopolies, so not a company having monopoly, but the country itself, like with the Systembolaget, that kind of stuff. Added a number of extra treaty articles for the DLC. No tariff on goods, no subventions on goods, no prohibit trade of good with the world market. So if you want to be the sole supplier, then this right here is exactly how you do this. Law commitments, so that people need to do something about changing their laws into whatever you want from them. Non-colonization agreement, grant monopoly to foreign company, and so on. There are a bunch of elements in this, but like I said, of course, the big bucks, I think, are in the free patch. I'll be honest with you, I'm actually impressed, which is why I'm like, this has to be unbalanced. There have to be broken things right here. The mechanical reworking, so what they actually did on a volume level is pretty insane if you think about it, if we take a moment, right, trade is now autonomous. It happens through the world market. It happens through companies taking over. So not just you investing somewhere or your private actors. No. It is your companies taking things over. You also, of course, end up with a pretty interesting rework, I think, thanks to the trade market with the world market. I mean, how you can blockade other nations now. Blockade, of course, was something that we didn't have access to altogether. There is a ton of mechanical change in here, and I think mechanical change that is extremely impressive at the very least to me. In theory. Let's hope that it comes out the other way as well, so that this doesn't stay a game theory, but instead becomes a game practice. Added a new power block principle group focused on effects for companies, that's awesome. Added new 3D models for regional company HQs, building in all cultures, that's pretty neat. You get DNA for historical executives and so on and so forth. I am a big fan. Now, let's talk about the achievements here. Yes, we have bananas. Produce prestige good Gros Michel banana from United Fruit Company and get 25% share of total goods on the world market. Okay, that's pretty good, 25% share just from that. Fordlandia, have an automotive company establish a country via a colony and have a top 10 GDP. I need to do that one, I'm gonna be honest with you. Champagne Socialist, as a council republic, produce more than 100 units of champagne. Interesting. Okay, franchising. I love the art, by the way. That looks so good. Establish a regional HQ and have it own at least 20 levels. That shouldn't be that hard. Obviously, this is a bit of a reference here, I guess, to McDonald's right there. Systembolaget, as Sweden have a country monopoly on liquor. That is what they have in real life. It's crazy. You can only go to one store, and I believe you can sell, like, really low alcohol stuff in other stores. I know Canada also has something similar, depending on the province you are in. Listen, in Germany, you go to the supermarket, you buy your cigarettes, you buy your liquor, you buy any liquor, really. It's a free country, okay, pal? This communism right here, who needs it? Then with a free 1.9 update, so these were the DLC ones, we also have It's a Blockade, fully blockaded world market hub that is connected to at least 100 trade centers. Swiss bank account, as Switzerland, make more than 10% of your GDP from money transfer through treaties. Pretty interesting right there. All quiet on the Western Front, have over 1 million casualties on a single front. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention this. They are also, of course, reworking a whole bunch about warfare. I talked about this in the past at length. Will this make it so that you will have fun doing war? Probably not. Will it make it so that you will be much less annoyed and have a better time in general? I think so. It looks that way anyway. Let's hope that it actually functions. Wall of Text have 10 or more articles in a single treaty. Venice Vidi Vici, as Venice have the most trade centers in the world. Pretty cool stuff. We're gonna get now into the weeds here with the changelog. Again, like I said, super looking forward to playing this. Bugs be damned, I will have some fun in this, I think, because my god, they are changing a lot here. Completely reworked the trade system. The old trade routes are gone, and instead there's now a world market. I will explain all of this in practice in separate videos as well. You can trust me on that one. I'm going to not leave you hanging there. It is now a bit more complex, but all in all, I think simpler once you understand it, because then you will finally understand that you now are only making the top level decisions and everything else is automated. Reworked how large parts of the diplomacy system work by adding diplomatic treaties. Again, super cool. Let's hope that it works. It's a difficult thing because it is now so many factors kind of going in there that are interconnected rather than separate in individual interactions like it was until now. Reworked, removed war reparations war goal, replaced it with a transfer money enforced treaty article, so you basically will get a treaty after this, right? Makes sense. Reworked treaty port, foreign investment rights, ban slavery, and the forced nationalization war goal to use treaties instead. As I understand it, treaty ports are also actually a part of their mother nation's market, which essentially is different from how it used to be, and also means that they will now import stuff in their treaty port, which means you would need trade centers in the treaty. But it's super interesting stuff. We're going to get into that once, there's actually some footage, of course, visible here on the channel. Reworked front generation algorithm. They are now kind of additive. They are summarized together if they are close enough. And I hope that this will not be too jarring. In come some weird edge cases, right? And most importantly, make it so that it functions properly. Low supply no longer directly affects unit morale recovery. I can't even read anymore. We can now bulk edit formations. There were various changes to countries because they are now run directly by companies. It is awesome to see this stuff. They added more historical companies and so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff I think to look forward to right here, but I want to dive more into the bug fixes, balancing improvements, that kind of stuff, because most of this stuff we already talked about, of course, in the past, right? The military access system, that kind of stuff, it's covered in videos. The War Machines industry building has been renamed to Automotive Industries and now produces cars as its primary good and tanks and airplanes as its secondary good, based on the Automotive Industry rework mod by Index004. I have played with that, I love that mod, I think it's a really good choice. Love to see when they do this kind of integration, when somebody just did it better, or rather found a better approach to something that already existed in the game. Really, really good change. It will give you an interesting choice right there, rather than an industry that is just entirely warfare based. Added notifications for India to communicate the result of the Indian Home Rule Request Government Reform button. So this is always good when they add more visibility. I think getting notifications is one of the peak elements in this game as well. Companies can now be formed from any mix of country-owned and privately held levels, and their initial building levels no longer need to be nationalized first. Love to see that. Companies are now a central part. They finally are becoming what we all kind of wanted from the very get-go. I love it. They are doing the exact right moves here, since there is so much gameplay that is interesting and comes with companies now. Making them more accessible, I think, is a great choice. Next up, Risorgimento, and this is super interesting to me. I need to see it in action. Annexation events are no longer tied to radical population. So at a certain radical population, you get a popular rebellion, and at a second one, you then get annexed by a bigger Italian nation. Instead, they're now tied to active revolutions. I am super curious whether this functions. Balancing, I will already tell you, this is not VTM, it's probably totally off. I do not foresee that I will see a lot of Italy's formed or Germany's formed. The game still struggles with this, but this is an interesting rework right here, meaning that countries need to become a lot much worse for this to actually just trigger this kind of chain reaction right there. British and Polish landowners also now kind of endorse voting laws. Interesting, okay. Removed all generic technology journal entries except for ones related to art genres. The completion events will now appear as single-fire pulse events instead, triggered by the journal entry's complete conditions. Basically, we have less generic journal entries, which nobody looks at anyway, and we just get those now as events, which I think is fine. They are meant to happen organically anyway, and you will be fulfilling them organically. Nothing wrong with this. I am kind of curious what prompted a change like this one, because it is just something about visibility, right? They also made railway buildings care about missing infrastructure rather than market access when determining if it should auto-expand. Clearly there was an issue previously where they would keep building even if the actual issue is market access via ports. London conference votes are now weighted by the prestige of the country issuing the vote. I really feel like that just means Britain decides everything, but okay. Red Scare Arc event now has a limit on the number of pops that can be deported. Interesting, I like it, okay. Scaled infamy cost for expelling diplomats based on the target country. Expelling great and major powers remains at 10. Minor powers and unrecognized major powers go to 7.5, and then we got 5, and last, of course, other unrecognized powers go to 2.5 infamy. I like it. This scaling is neat, nothing wrong with it. Changed Risorgimento, we're back here. Buttons to contribute activism to applicable movements rather than spawning radicals, which means no longer do people become angry at the press of a button, rather a movement becomes more active, which then spawns radicals. I like this change. I need to see whether this is kind of working with the Civil War thing. Like, I need to see what this actually looks like in action, right? Enabled Italian states to annex Italian minor nations if they are the sole Italian unification candidate and have a friendly or above relation with the relevant country. That is pretty basic. Like, that is pretty easy to achieve. Should make it easier. Whether the AI can do it is dubious to me, because Two Sicilies falls behind because of its terrible laws, whereas, of course, the Digne Piedmont basically never does anything. Gold, rubber, and oil rushes will now happen far less frequently and have their effects rebalanced, and now have new options to hide future events and apply the chosen effects automatically. Thank you. The open market Woggle is now once again available, even if you have Sphere of Influence or Charters of Commerce, as investment rights no longer auto-open markets. There is now a difference between an open market, there's a difference, I should say, between an open market and you being able to invest in them. Makes perfect sense. The pro-slavery movement now supports local police. I think that is fine. I think it is kind of a buff, if you ask me. I mean, it is a bit of a trap, right? If you go into that just strengthens the landowners, but local police is nice if you just want to make it through the couple first decades to get rid of unrest and build up your industry, which then actually goes against the slavers because they are not into industry. Changed supply routes to end at the current position of the army. I like this. You need to set this up as closely as you can to the actual location rather than just, for example, a hub, a state region, that kind of stuff, so that you can follow this and trace it in its entirety. Huge fan. Add a tooltip to the readmit the secessionist states JE to clarify completion conditions. Did they make it playable yet? I am not certain, but I sure hope so. Those events are very 1.0, right? They are a couple of events where you're like, okay, I see what you are doing there, but we have moved past this. We can do better, right? And this maybe makes it so that finally we can actually do better. Not entirely sure. Now I'm actually like framed properly in the camera. Let's keep it this way. AI. The AI now has a much better understanding of what is required to form unique companies and is able to pursue specific construction strategies to try and do so. Cool. Okay. Fixed a bug where the AI wouldn't enact a law even though they should when the supporting movement was having a neutral stance towards a law. Okay. Added a missing or statement which required the AI to have completed Meiji and the Russian serfdom JEs before they try to get out of traditionalism. So both of these should now be doing better. I hope so. You know how it is. We need to see more activity, but it always kind of coincides with balancing. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you, and I am going to beat this drum ever more now. Victoria 3, before we can balance it, before we can make the AI more active, needs to have bigger population. We need to be in a situation where we have historical population growths, or half of the stuff that is in the game as journal entries doesn't really make much sense. Unless we see that, well, who knows how much this will actually do. Let's hope that it does some. Now we come to some interesting things here. Balance. Reduced company throughput bonuses, as it is now easier for companies to get more building levels. Makes sense, right? Canal companies now provide a free company slot as part of their prosperity bonus. Amazing. Finally, canal companies are good. Remove the free company slot from laissez-faire economic law. Laissez-faire is, of course, by far the best law. I hope that it isn't the case anymore. You know, at least by far, I should say, probably still going to be the best. But it is the best because it just lets your economy blow up like crazy. Now that we probably can't do monopolies, right? If you have laissez-faire, hopefully it becomes slightly less good. Would be great. Reworked, a modern conservative event, into the Anti-Corn Laws League. The event now spawns a petit bourgeoisie market liberal agitator rather than a landowner's market liberal agitator, and may strengthen liberal, modernizer, and Orleanist movements. I like this a lot. I never used the abuse here, or I never used this exploit, but hey, if you did, this should take the wind out of your sails. Added a baseline drift factor to the unstable Raj that seeks to drift towards the lower bound of high stability, pivot of empire. Prosperity now goes from 0 to 100 and companies become prosperous at 100, activating their prosperity modifier. They lose the prosperous status if it drops below 75 again. We already talked about this, I like it. Next up, added a construction efficiency penalty to 20% to unincorporated states. That's crazy. I hope that this actually is impactful, because I would really like it if you justify us using, of course, for example, states in Africa a little bit more. I have to wager that it still probably won't be enough, just because it is balanced basically in a way where I will build so fast that this won't mean anything to me. But I like the tendency here. They clearly recognize what is kind of over the top, although again, more is still needed. Ports are no longer level capped, and natural harbors and equivalent trades now increase port throughput instead of port max level. Super interesting. We have to see how this plays. It gives us a lot more freedom in designing our actual economy here, since we're no longer hard-locked. Gave natural harbor estate trades and their flavored variants a mappy bonus, thanks to you, RIT CS student, for the suggestion. Okay, cool. Penalties for low organization are now much more severe, with up to 75% penalties to our offense and defense. Very cool. Unique companies now generally require fewer buildings levels to form. Amazing. Love to see it. Again, companies, a huge gameplay element, making it easier to access is good. Bolstering or suppressing a movement now also adds a base value to the movement pop attraction. This should make both actions feel much more impactful, because it should just attract more of them. Enabled the use of annex country diplomatic plays against countries with a rank of insignificant power or below. Okay, makes it easier to act against them. Interesting. Should make it cheaper as well, right? Livestock ranches now have more efficient PMs with higher base profit margins, and pops now prefer to consume non-grain food sources over grain, and should generally consume more meat where available. Great, I need to play in South America. Now, next up, military units can now be recruited and PMs requiring a supply of a specific good activated if that good exists in the world market and can theoretically be imported by the relevant state. This is massive. Even if you don't understand why, I can tell you that this is massive, because what has so far kept the AI quite often from upgrading its units is that there is no demand for a certain good, because they cannot upgrade their units because there is no certain good, which means they never built the buildings, and without the buildings, they never built overbuild the units. This should be gone for good. I am really happy about this change. The world market in general promises so much goodness for me. Huge fan right there. Added a bonus to the economy of scale cap to the transportation 3 principle. Added a 5% birth rate increase to religious convocation power blocks. Reduced authority gain from vassalization principles. We can see, I think, a couple of things here that definitely needed a rebalance when it comes to this. Let's hope that it does enough. Added a throughput penalty to devastation. At maximum devastation, the penalty is 50%. And made devastation decay a lot slower. It now takes about 3 times as long to recover. I like it. I like that a lot. It went away far too quickly. Huge fan right there. Changed the quality for all criteria to require average acceptance over 60 for Afro-Americans rather than base acceptance. Okay, so they rebalanced that as well. Like it. Opium now has a lower base weight for pop consumption, but a much higher chance of becoming an obsession. We need more obsessions in general. I can only really say this, we desperately need more obsessions. I hope that prestige goods do this, right? This is one of those things that I definitely want to test. Running something that is a prestige good, supposedly, this will create an obsession more easily. I want to get everybody addicted to whatever it is I'm producing. Made trade unions, rural folk, and industrialists less likely to form unsustainable parties on their own. I like this. Rebalancing politics is always important. Seeing this right here should make it so that, yeah, you actually get some coherent opposition to the conservatives, right? This is the idea. Divine economics now increase trade advantage when trading with same state religion countries. Yet another buff. Awesome. Next up, disable assimilation for slave pops so that they will no longer assimilate to other cultures. Thank you. That is very good. Art, I don't even need to tell you. They added 3D models for world market hub ports. They added 3D models for the blockade entity stuff, right? So when you're blockading stuff. I think we also get it for regional HQs in all. Great stuff. I love the art team. God bless the art team. I need a season pack, okay? I love day and night. I need seasons. Please, I beg you. Now, content-wise, they also changed a couple of things. I want to focus on this one, actually. Added a new character ideology called Modernizer. Thank you, Doodles. I salute you. Added a new entrepreneur character trait for executives and added executive relevant statistics to existing traits. They also added Albert Einstein. They added a bunch of different character DNA and so on. They added a decision for Italy to move the capital to Rome. Love it. Added historical trade centers based on available 1836 commercial data. You nerds. I love it. Great stuff. An independent Canada is now dark red. Let me just say this. I think that you folks have a broken flag. The historical Canadian flag that they actually have never shows up because the one that is like blue always overwrites it. You guys need to fix this, okay? The dark red color is awesome, but you definitely need to fix that. Interface added a bunch of stuff. I don't need to go through all of these individually. It seems to me that the UI is now finally at a point where they know the game so well. I swear to God, if you lose any of your UX designers, I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna kick you, okay? Speaking here to John Paradox, okay? I'm not gonna go through these individually. Let me just tell you, I am super happy with where UI is moving. I really am getting the feeling that essentially the UX team understands where this game is headed, what it is doing, and it has a better and probably more time actually implementing everything so that you can easily tell where what is what you need. I am a huge fan of all of this. I think that is amazingly done. The only way that I can really describe this is essentially, finally, we're getting the UX that is immediately needed for features as complex as in Victoria 3. Again, they did a lot. I don't want to mention all of it, but yeah, clearly it's a lot. Performance? Let's be realistic, okay? It's probably going to be pretty mediocre if you're not on a 7800X3D or better, like a 9800X3D. I cannot see this game getting any lighter. There's also a lot of modding. Nobody cares. Modders are nerds. Let's talk about bug fixes. Fixed a bug where the occupation wasn't removed after a peace deal involving a tributary. Great stuff. They fixed a lot of bugs. I'm sure that they also introduced a couple more, right? And then, well, we are going to see, indeed, this come out on the 17th of June. I am super excited for this. I'm really looking forward to this. I cannot wait to give you more actual gameplay, more footage, more everything kind of here on the channel. Super hyped for that. Again, over the weekend, I'm going to ask all of the people that are channel members, what do they want to see out of 3 particular roleplay playthroughs? We're going to do that playthrough. Also, of course, other kind of videos, right? And then we are finally fully in gameplay mode over the summer, right? For everything related to CK3 and Victoria 3, because all the patches are out. It is quiet until Q3, Q4, which means we can just play. And I'm, of course, going to have a lot of content on the channel here as well. Folks, I'm excited for this. I Hope that we're not running into something that is as intense as the Stellaris hotfix situation. But either way, listen, I am looking forward to playing this and, of course, to talking with you about what is here coming out. I will leave it right here, and I will see you later, alligator.